Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the very first edition of Nick at Fright. My name is Nick the Shape. On this channel, we will be discussing anything horror or sci-fi related. And tonight, we will be discussing an iconic movie prop, the 1975 Captain Kirk Mask, made by Don Post Studios, which was used for the infamous slasher character, Michael Myers. Everyone knows the story behind this mask, about how director John Carpenter needed a mask for Michael Myers in the horror cult classic Halloween of 1978. Production designer Tommy Lee Wallace went to Don Post Studios and picked up this mask for cheap. He took off the sideburns, opened up the eye sockets, and spray painted the mask white. Lo and behold, you had what would go on to be one of the most recognizable faces in horror cinema, Michael Myers. Don Post Studios came out with a line of latex Star Trek masks in the mid-70s. One of them was for the character Captain Kirk, played by William Shatner. The mask was designed in 1975 by taking a casting of William Shatner's face. The mask was made of skin tone latex. The latex used for the mask was very high quality. Any kind of latex over time will rot, especially if you don't take care of the mask. People who had bought the mask before Halloween came out in '78 didn't bother to take care of the mask because little did they know that they would one day have a small fortune on their hands. Also, at this time, people weren't educated on how to take care of latex masks. So instead of having the mask stuffed and stored in a cool, dry place, they probably had the mask lying around in a box of other junk that eventually made its way to the garbage or over time just deteriorated from neglect. When the mask was released in 1975, the Kirk mask didn't sell very well. The reason it didn't sell very well was because it really didn't look much like Captain Kirk, and honestly, it just looked eerie. There were a couple of Kirk masks left over from production for Halloween. Deborah Hill, the producer of Halloween, stored one of the masks in a shoebox under her bed for a couple of years until Halloween 2 was released. In Halloween 2, you will notice the mask looks different than the first movie. The mask is much grungier because the mask wasn't taken care of properly over the years by Deborah Hill. Also, she was a heavy smoker, and the smoke was not good for the condition of the mask. This was the mask that was used for a majority of the film. At the end of filming, Dick Warlock, who played Myers, took the mask and coveralls home with him. Years later, he would eventually sell the mask to a collector. In addition to the original mask, newer Kirk masks were used in Halloween 2. These new masks were made specifically for two stunt scenes in the movie. Robert Tharp, who was an employee of Don Post at the time, made these stunt masks. These were made from the leftover molds from the '75 Kirk mask. At this point, the casting of William Shatner's face, which was made for the molds, had disappeared. The masks made for Halloween 2 would be used for the stunt scenes only. The first stunt scene was the Ben Tramer scene. In this scene, Tramer gets into an auto accident and the scene ends in a fire explosion. The second stunt scene was the last part of the film where Michael walks out of the fire for his last attempt to kill his sister, Laurie Strode. Obviously, both masks were melted in the stunt fires. There was around 11 molds originally that were made from the William Shatner casting that was done in '75. These molds were called soldier molds. Unfortunately, the cast of William Shatner's face, which was used for the mask molds, was stolen shortly after Halloween's success. The only thing left at the time of the Halloween 2 production was a couple of the molds left over from the 75 Kirk. All the other molds had been too worn out to use again or stolen from Don Post Studios employees. The molds that were made from the 75 casting could only be used a limited amount of times. Every time a mask was made from these molds, the molds would absorb moisture. The more moisture the mold would have, there would be less detail in the mask. So example, the first masks that were made from the original molds came out highly detailed, but the last ones, the details weren't nearly as good because of the drawn-in moisture from the previous masks. So basically, the reason why it's nearly impossible to have an actual 75 Kirk mask is because the casting of Shatner's face had mysteriously disappeared in the late 70s, and most of the molds were either too worn out to be used anymore or stolen by Don Post employees. This is why this mask is extremely rare. Chances are, if you can get your hands on a Kirk mask, it most likely will be in terrible condition due to the rotting the latex goes through over the years. It's extremely rare to find one these days in tip-top condition. If you are one of the lucky ones to get struck by lightning and stumble upon one in your lifetime, prepare to spend thousands of dollars. I would like to say the information that I reported in this video was given to me by a friend who owns an actual 1975 Kirk mask. He went on an incredible journey of finding this mask during the time when internet really wasn't around. During his journey, he found out a lot of these details from Don Post Jr., the son of Don Post. Eventually, we will have him on the show to talk about this great mask, and hopefully we'll be able to see it up close and personal. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and sleep tight.